Splatoon. This game has become huge since it was first announced back at E3 2 years ago. Ever since it was first shown, people wanted to know how competitive it was. All people knew was that it looked fun as hell. A game where you play as a squid and a kid? Sign me up. But since its release, there hasn't been too hard of a competitive push on the game. Well, besides the $1 million tournament in Japan. Wait, there's a $1 million tournament in Japan? All people want out of this game here are some dank squid memes. Well, anyway, does Splatoon have the potential to be played on a competitive platform? Let's find out on today's competitive review. Splatoon is Nintendo's first splash, get it? Because they're squids and they splash around. Okay, yeah, I'm bad at this, I know. This is Nintendo's first splash into the competitive shooting game genre. Most of which are FPS, but Splatoon likes to play it cool and use a third person. The online gameplay modes, which will be discussed later, revolve around inking the map with a team of 4, allowing for various advantages in the heat of battle, and is what the online modes and objectives are based around. Putting your ink down is the key to all things Splatoon. It is what you must do. It works very well as a gameplay mechanic as well as a competitive one. There are 2 online modes: player matches, which have you play turf war, and ranked matches. Ranked matches can switch its mode every 2 hours, which can be a real pain when you're trying to capture footage for a review, but you just want to play a certain game type, but you can't because it isn't being played right now, and you don't have other friends to play with, so you can't go into a private match and do that either. And anyway, it switches between 3 game modes: Splat Zone, Tower Control, and Rainmaker. I'll talk about those later, but for now, let's just talk about weapons and their balance within the game. There are 3 different types of main weapon. First, you have the most popular type, the shooter type. This includes weapons like the Splattershot Jr. and the very popular Aerospray MG or RG. These are mainly automatic guns that have a variety of different properties. They are rated by their range, damage, and fire rate. These weapons can shoot out ink from various distances, allowing for a widespread ink coverage and mid-range attacks. This weapon class has the most variety, having guns that range from having a very fast fire rate like the previously mentioned Aerospray RG, to having guns that only fire one big burst of ink at a time, like the Blaster series. These weapons work well for intermediate players, having not too high of a skill barrier, but not completely easy to pick up and be good with either. Next is the dreaded roller class. This weapon has caused a thorn in players' side since even before the game was released with the global test fire a while back, for those of you who even got to play it. Anyway, this is the easiest class of weapon to use, making it great for beginners and an incredible force to be reckoned with within the hands of a good player. The rollers splat any player that comes too close, it can get easy kills on the unsuspecting. Not only that, but they have the option to fling its ink off of the brush and onto players as well. They are very strong in getting kills, but they aren't without their flaws. Some of them can be slow, and players must plan their attacks carefully or else they will be outranged. The rollers are mainly good for getting some kills, but only great players can use them to help their team. I'll talk more about this later. I know there's a lot of pin topics, but just bear with me. Lastly, we have the Splatter Scope class. This is the advanced weapon type. Like seriously, they are really hard to be good with, but they are a must-have for any good competitive team. They are similar to the shooter class, but they must charge a shot to fire a large trail of ink. These splat in one hit if fully charged, and can splat even earlier with well-set abilities. Again, something we'll talk about later. These have a really far range, being able to splat players across the map if they aren't careful. This class is really good for support, usually wanting to stay away and make sure other teammates aren't ambushed. Now I know the Inkling Gun and the Slosher count as their own weapon class, but they are very similar to the shooter and the roller, so screw those. Now let's talk gear. So I told you we'd get back to these. You can take out your squid in some dank squid gear. However, they aren't just for fashion. The gear you use have abilities that will help you in battle. There are a lot of abilities, and even sub-abilities, that you can add to your gear to give your squid an extra edge in a firefight. Getting the exact abilities that you want can be some work. It really can't be done until you're level 20. You see, the clothes you wear have one main ability and 3 sub-abilities. Each gear has one main ability that it will always have, while the sub-abilities are interchangeable. The sub-abilities are chosen at random when they level up, and slots for sub-abilities can be added if it doesn't have the max 3 slots. And the sub-abilities can be re-rolled if the gear has all 3 slots. This is something that will make the game very difficult to play competitively if players can have the gear customized to their liking. However, there is a way. Gears have different brands, and these brands can help your odds of getting the exact sub-abilities that you want. For example, gears from Inkline will increase your chances of rolling a defense up, or gear from Squid Force will increase your chances of rolling an attack up. Now there is a lot more to this game that I can't cover all here, like all the different sub-weapons and sub-abilities and things like that. So if you want to learn more about the weapons and gear or anything else about the game, you should definitely check out the Splatoon wiki. It has all the info that you would need to know to start playing the game competitively. Now we're going into the game modes and how each one is played on a competitive level, or if it even should be played at a competitive level. Our first gameplay mode is Turf War. The objective here is to simply have your team put down ink on the map. The team with the most ink on the map wins. While it is a very simple gameplay mode, it can demand to be very strategic as well against skilled teams. This mode is the only one that has been played at a high level with the Nintendo World Championship that happened back in E3. If any big tournaments were to be played in Splatoon, it would most likely be this mode. It's simple but open-ended objective and allows for this mode to be played any kind of way the player wishes. However, I believe it has its problems. There are a lot of weapons that are much harder to use in this mode than in others. For example, the Blaster is a great weapon for getting kills quickly and can even counter the roller pretty well. However, the amount of ink it produces isn't very good, making the player work much harder for something that other weapons can do easily. What I'm getting at here is that this mode is made for beginners. It's simple so that anyone can understand what to do and play and have fun, which is fine, but the problem is that some weapons are clearly made to be able to splat enemies quickly, something that isn't quite beneficial for Turf War. You need to survive to put your ink on the map, but you don't need to go hunting for kills, since even if you get a kill, they come right back and are able to cover the map in their ink, and if you're too busy getting kills and not following the objective, that can lead you a lost. Getting kills isn't a bad thing, but having mobility and ink coverage is more important for this game mode. Next is probably my favorite mode, Splat Zones. This mode is similar to Turf War, but instead of the whole map, you have to keep a certain part of the map and your team's ink as a counter goes down. When the counter reaches 0, or if time runs out with your team having less time, then you win. This is where weapons that splat easily get their shine. Since everyone is trying to go to 1 or 2 locations on the map, splatting enemies is great for this mode since it keeps them away from the splat zone. Just because splatting enemies is good for this mode doesn't mean that getting your ink down is bad. Remember when I said putting ink down is the key to all things Splatoon? Well, that remains true and is shown in this mode. However, since the area you're supposed to ink is much smaller, weapons that don't have a lot of range and may struggle in Turf War are better equipped for Splat Zone, all while still keeping weapons with more range and are good in Turf War are still good in Splat Zone as well. Next is Tower Control, and honestly, I have a love and hate relationship with this mode. On one hand, it has all the things that make Splat Zones great, but with a nice spin on it. In Tower Control, there's a tower, and you control it. With ink, of course you have to ink the tower, but there's a catch. You must get on the tower and it will begin to move towards the team's goal. Reach your goal or get closer to your goal than the other team's goal when time runs out, then you win. Now when Tower Control is good, it's really good. Getting off the tower and flanking other players, trying to get on and splatting them is pretty awesome. But the problem with this mode comes from certain stages, and I am looking at you, Bluefin Depot. This mode can be the most rage-inducing on certain maps. For example, I'm using the Splattershot Junior that comes with the bubble shield. I get on the tower and activate the bubble so it makes it harder to get me off. Sounds like a good plan, right?
Here comes the rain again, falling from the stars, drenched in my pain again.
something hits the bubble, the players push back. Not usually a problem, but here, it kills me. It never fails. This happens almost every time I play tower control on that map. And it wouldn't be that bad if you could just hop off, but doing so on certain parts is suicide and will lead to the other team getting the tower. This isn't just Bluefin Depot either. There are other maps with the same problem. I'm sorry if I came off a bit ranty there, but man, I just hate it when that happens. Besides all that though, this is a really good game mode. Just on the right maps. Lastly is Rainmaker. This mode is similar to tower control since you have to go to a goal, but unlike tower control, you carry the Rainmaker, allowing players different ways to reach the goal instead of a set path like in tower control. This mode is okay, but probably my least favorite in the game. The Rainmaker is this dragon looking thing that shoots out big tornadoes of ink, similar to the Ink Zuka or the Ink Strike. The objective is to simply take the Rainmaker to the goal, but this game is very dependent on teamwork, something that you don't always have being matched with random people. When you have the Rainmaker, you can't use any of your weapons or specials, just the Rainmaker, but it's super slow, so you need your teammates to make a path and guide you through the map and get to the goal. This mode can be pretty fun, but only with a good team. If your teammate ignores the objective and goes straight for splats, you will most likely lose. There isn't really much about the mode that I haven't said about the other modes already, but I will say I like its emphasis on teamwork. It's the only one that really demands it to find success competitively. Let's talk competitive play. So you love Splatoon, so much that you want to become the best squid you can be. How do you get good at this game and play it competitively? Well, first you're going to need a squid squad. Playing with random people is okay just for having fun, but if you want to be a serious squid, you need to get a group of trusted and good players to make your team. Next, you need all of your gear fully customized with all the abilities and sub-abilities that complement your weapon and playstyle. For example, if you use a roller, you might want to have the run speed up instead of the swim speed up. You wouldn't really need attack ups since rollers already splat pretty quickly, and you may want to have defense up, so when you encounter a shooter, you can last long enough to get the splat or for a quick getaway. Planning how you want to play is really important. What is also important is having a diverse team. Your whole team shouldn't have the same loadout, so make sure you all have different gear so you can all cover each other's weaknesses. Now again, there is a lot more to know about Splatoon competitively, but I can't cover all of it because there's just so much stuff to cover, and this isn't really a tutorial series, so again, I do recommend everyone check out the Splatoon wiki for more information. The last thing I want to talk about here is balance. One of the most important things to consider when thinking about picking up a game competitively. So is Splatoon balanced? Well, it's a hard question to answer. While a lot of people do complain that the rollers are too strong, I disagree. Yes, they are easy for getting splats, but getting splats isn't the goal of any of the game modes, and I believe Nintendo knew this and made them with that in mind. They can get outranged by the splatter scope and shooter class pretty easily. It's when they can splat you by throwing their ink on you that can be frustrating, but again, there are ways around it. The splatter scope doesn't really have this problem too much since they mostly want to stay away. With the shooters, they can have a much faster fire rate and they can get the splat. You just have to have really good accuracy. Case in point, the rollers are nowhere near broken and all weapon classes are usable. In fact, it's good to have all of them on a team. Weapon variations are a nice way of giving players different options for weapons that they like but want to use different sub-weapons or specials. There isn't anything that's too OP, and most weapons have viability, and no one gear loadout is supreme, so I think that Splatoon is pretty balanced. So now, the big question. Should Splatoon be played competitively? I think out of all of this info and analysis, I forgot to say how much fun Splatoon really is. The entire concept of the game is a lot of fun and creative, which is why I think this game exploded the way it did. It has a lot of that Nintendo charm that everyone loves but with a new IP. But a lot of people think Nintendo's games are made just for fun and aren't meant to be played competitively. But Splatoon is different. We can clearly see Nintendo is making an effort to see this game played at a high level. We can see this with the official Splatoon website, being able to see in-depth patch changes and balance adjustments. We can see this with the Splatoon Facebook page, which has a really good weapon analysis. Like, seriously, go check them out if you have never seen them and want some good info on some weapons. We can see this with the Nintendo World Championship. There is a small push for it from them, but what we really need is you. Splatoon is a great game, but frankly there isn't much competition for it. Besides playing ranked matches online, this game doesn't have that big of a competitive scene. Now that doesn't mean there isn't a handful of awesome people that take this game seriously and try to inform people on new tech and strategies that can be used, but there isn't enough people taking the game to a competitive level. Splatoon has a large fan base, they are there, we just need a bigger push for competition. This could also be a result of no LAN options either, which if you could add that, Nintendo, that would be great. So how do we get that bigger push? Well, you guessed it, you. We need you to make this game bigger. We need all player support to make this game more competitive. With all of that said, I say yes, you should play Splatoon competitively. Going into it right now, it may seem like you don't have a lot to work with, but give it some time and group effort, and Splatoon will be seen as a great game for competition. Splatoon has the fan base, but the key word here is unison. We need more players to give the game a competitive edge, and soon enough, Splatoon will be seen as a competitive tyrant. This has been Competitive Review. Thanks for watching.